Good Friday morning to you, Spartans. Happy Friday, March 22nd. It's our last day before spring break. You can see the agenda. If you haven't checked in already, again, 9:30 to 10:15, and we have a Zoom meeting that you can attend. If you have a class that prevents you from meeting during that hour or during that time, again, feel free to send me an email, but we do need to make sure that we are checking in each week. Today, we continue our conversation regarding functionalism. And again, it's kind of this introduction into how sociologists analyze societal change. When we're done going through that, we're going to start prepping for when we return from spring break. We're going to talk about conflict theory. And again, it's just another way that sociologists would analyze societal change with. So Wednesday, we ran through this document here. We started going through it, and I gave you guys some examples of what the key concepts of sociology are: functional integration, culture, power, social structure, and action. You should have these more or less brief explanations down, okay? And again, when we're talking about societal change, every society has these key concepts of sociology. They have these group behaviors, group characteristics. So when we're analyzing societal change, this is what sociologists would look at to see how society is changing, why society is changing, and again, how that change compares from one society, think the United States, to another society, think Mexico or the United Kingdom or France. So on Wednesday, you were supposed to go through and analyze the societal change that occurred within the US school system due to COVID. And we started with functional integration. And again, functional integration is the parts of society that are connected to one another and they serve a purpose. Everything we have in society serves a purpose. Every structure in society serves a purpose. The economy, schools, government, family, religion, they all do something. Baseball teams. So the function that changed during COVID was schools. Schools changed from being in person to online. In this theory of analyzing societal change, the argument is if you change one single component of society, one function of society, you will have a ripple effect through the rest of society. So if we change schools from in-person to online, how is that going to affect the rest of our society? Culture. How is that going to affect our culture? Again, culture is language, belief, values, and norms. What people do, think, and believe. You could literally have almost anything written here. I'm going to give you some examples. That doesn't mean what you have is wrong if you don't have what I have down. Again, a lot of this is opinion based, and a lot of this is from, what component of culture are you looking at? We certainly cannot look at all of the components of culture in, a 20-minute video. So if we change schools from in-person to online, how is that going to affect our language, values, beliefs, and norms? Well, some people enjoyed being online. Perhaps you have written down that people enjoyed more freedom or more unstructured time, or perhaps enjoyed more independence. Maybe there was maybe it became culturally ingrained in the year and a half or 2 years where we were not in school every single day. Perhaps you enjoyed those things. Perhaps you hated online learning. Perhaps you hated distance learning. Maybe your answers are people really missed, or people grew an appreciation for connectivity, being around their friends, structure, schedule. I mean, you could literally have anything down here. Or perhaps you could talk about when it came to culture, maybe you looked at the change in schools and the switch from online learning to in-person. Perhaps your example for culture was people became more critical of what schools were doing. I mean, all of these would work. Power. Again, the concept of power, the building block of power is group A imposing its will over group B. Prior to COVID, your parents made you get up in the morning. Your parents made you come to school. When you got to school, you had principals, teachers, paras, custodians. You had all these adults telling you what to do. You had a schedule to follow. You had 5 minutes to move in between classes. Homework was assigned. It was due at a specific time. It had to be done. Very clearly, group A were the adults in your life. And very clearly, you were group B. Perhaps you have down here students and to an extent, families gained more power. Or perhaps you wrote down teachers lost power. Teachers or school employees lost power. Really, it's all based on what perspective you're looking at this from, what angle you're looking at it from. Prior to COVID, I got to tell kids what to do. During COVID, I could ask kids what to do, but I couldn't make them do it. I wasn't showing up at 150 kids' house saying, where is your sociology project? Where is your map? Where is your personal finance assignment? I couldn't do it. I could send you an email, but because you didn't have to come into my classroom and look me in the eyes and deal with my wrath, you could basically more or less ignore me. There's no question that teachers lost some power here, that principals lost some power here over students because we couldn't control it. It's a lot easier to be defiant when you don't have to deal with a person looking at you. You could also argue, again, depending on the angle that you're looking at it from, families gained more power. Inver Grove Heights is one of the last schools to come back to in-person learning in 2021. We didn't start bringing all of our kids back until, I think it was May, almost the end of the year. Whereas other schools were starting to come back in February and March and April. The point of that little explanation is some families decided to unenroll their kids from one district to send them to another. They didn't want to continue doing distance learning. They didn't want to continue doing an augmented schedule where you only came to school on Mondays and Tuesdays or Wednesdays or Thursdays or Fridays. Parents and families started exercising more choice when it came to who was educating their children. Once you figure out how the power changes, it's very easy to understand the social structure. Because again, social structure is the classes in society. You got the people at the top, you got the people at the bottom. Well, if students and families gained more power during COVID because kids are at home, or if teachers lost power over their students and families because, again, kids are at home, then very clearly we're going to see a change to the social structure. You could have written something to the extent of students or families moved up the social structure. Or perhaps teachers and school employees moved down the social structure. You need a space there. Again, you may not have the exact same thing that I have, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be incorrect, which is why you're going to have to submit these so I can take a look at it and make sure we're all on the same page. If you've got some sort of mentioning here that groups moved up the power scale or the social structure, or groups moved down, then we're going to be just fine. And then we get to social action, one's behavior related to their position in the social structure. Well, maybe you looked at it from a student perspective. Students enjoyed more freedom or choice. Or perhaps you could write down, so we've seen this too, students struggled with social interaction or schedules. Because for a year and a half, 2 years, you guys are on your own. You're on your own own time frame, own reconnaissance, you're on your own. Recognizance, that's the word I was looking for. Maybe you enjoyed that. Maybe you appreciated that more. Maybe that became more of what you were doing. You want to do things on your own time. Or, oh, this is a good one. Students became dependent on their phone. Because again, you guys were home for a year and a half, 2 years. You became attached to it. Prior to it, for 9 months out of the year, you weren't supposed to be on your phone for half of the day. During COVID, when you guys are at home, I would imagine you're on your phone the entire time. Again, an example of social action. Maybe you looked at it from a negative perspective. Students became lazy. Students couldn't keep a schedule. Students couldn't get things done on time. Or perhaps a different angle. Relationships between students and parents changed because you were all cooped up in the same house. I would imagine you became annoyed with your parents. I mean, I know when I was locked up at home during COVID, I became a little annoyed with my wife because she teaches first grade. I didn't know there was 67 different ways that you could say good morning. You could say good morning like a pirate, good morning like a dog, good morning like a parakeet. It was awful. Why can't we just say good morning? Awful. 28 first graders by Zoom. Oof. There's really no wrong answer here. All right. There are so many different components of society that there's a pretty good chance that anything that you wrote down would be accurate. As long as what you wrote down has something to do with these concepts, these key concepts of sociology, it'll largely be accurate. Now, the difficult thing about sociology and what will be challenging for you guys to kind of wrap your head around is that there's no one reason, there's no one single catalyst as to why society changes. We could analyze our change in society based on COVID, or you could analyze the change in society based on a conflict. That's the next perspective that you guys are going to read about. And once you're done reading about it and we talk about it, you're going to see that a lot of these changes that occur in society from a conflict perspective, especially when it comes to schools and COVID, very much line up with the changes in society that occurred due to changing our classes or our school system from in-person to online. So here's what you have, and you should be able to get this done before the end of the day so you can enjoy your spring break. You just have questions 9 through 10 to read and answer for when we return. That's where we'll pick up when we come back. And then we're going to do the exact same thing we did with functionalism. We're going to analyze societal change from a conflict perspective. Schools, COVID, but we're going to look at it from the conflict perspective. So you do not need to submit this. You do not need to turn it in because we still got to do conflict perspective next when we return from break, and then symbolic interactionism. Thank you very much. We are all done today. If you have not checked in yet this week, do make sure you send me an email if you cannot get into the Zoom. Enjoy your spring break. I hope your cup spilleth over with fun and relaxation. And I'll see you guys in a week or so. Take care.